and do things out of the normal.
Too late.
Our tightly scripted selves. We're actually going to talk about freedom in business and what that means to us and to you. Hopefully you'll participate in that, and the kind of the nuances of freedom and how that's being affected by our world conditions and how it's not, and how sometimes what looks like challenges can lead us into new freedoms. So I'm looking forward to that. We will then hear from a couple of people who had bottlenecks in the last couple of weeks and get updates from them. And then we will open it up to your bottlenecks. And a bottleneck, of course, if you're not familiar with us, is an opportunity, challenge, or problem that you've been wrestling with, or maybe even given up on, that you can really use the wisdom of crowds every time, I think without fault, that somebody presents a bottleneck, especially the crowd as diverse as this from various places. They get insight into something that they couldn't see before. And so think about your own bottleneck, and you can present it today. And then we will finish up with some what we call BFOs, blinding flash of the obvious, like what's your takeaway today, and a word about community.
Cool. So I must have been thinking about our time together today, because I had this dream. It felt like early this morning. And my dream life is pretty crazy. You can ask Tom some other time how crazy my dream life is. But I had this dream about the rising phoenix, actually. And at one point, I was in the dream and I was making decisions for what had to go, for things that actually had to die, for things that had to burn up. And I, at first, was kind of sad about it. And then I realized, oh, what's really happening is that I'm making room for these new things. So of course, this rising phoenix mythical bird, every 100 years goes through that process of settling into the kindling and letting things that need to burn, totally burn up so that something new can emerge. And so really on that theme of freedom today, what really has to go? What maybe have we even been holding on to that does not serve us anymore in mindset, in habits, in behaviors, in relationships, in the type of work we do, or in some aspects of our work that needs to go so something really brilliant and new can emerge. So that is why we called this the Rising Phoenix Business Community, because we believe that everybody on the call every week is positioned for something great, right? For something amazing. And so Chuck, talk to us a little bit about business freedom and what can we do to become more free in terms of our work?
Yeah, I thought this would be a great topic for us Americans, and others can join in. Since it was our July 4th, everybody has some date that they look forward or look backward to. I've worked in the Congo a lot, and they have June 30th is a big date for them, because that's in 1963, June 30th is when is it June 26th? June 26th, they took over their own country for the first time in hundreds of years. Everybody's got a freedom thing they're looking at, but for us, I think it's good to look at what freedom is. Here's an interesting way to start this. Here's the definition of freedom right off the internet: the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. And then the second one, absence of subjection to foreign domination, despotic government, the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. I don't like these definitions. I don't think they're really healthy, because this is sort of, all of this stuff is about freedom from. Freedom from somebody or something that's trying to keep me down. And I'm not sure that that's a really healthy view of what freedom ought to be. I don't think it is. And I'm just surprised as I watch these definitions fall. The first one is a little less that, but even that one still has a lot of that in it. So what is freedom? Well, obviously this is freedom.
Going down the slide.
No, not the slide. Just couldn't help myself. But I mean, that's freedom. Come on. That's freedom. The dude is doing what he wants. So what is freedom? I think we should talk about freedom as being, and we're going to talk in terms of business today, not just general freedom in general as human beings or as nations, but I think for us, we ought to apply this, since this is a business group of people. What is business freedom? And for me, I think it's freedom to, not freedom from. So that's kind of what, if you don't remember anything else, freedom ought to lead us to something. It leads us in an open direction. It leads us toward. It doesn't lead us away. It's not an escape. We don't have to escape from tyranny or despotic government or all those other things. I just think those are, it's the freedom not to be something. I just don't, I don't get those. And I don't think psychologically they're very helpful either. Research has shown that when we run from things, they almost always draw us back in psychologically. If you work really hard at not being an alcoholic, you're very likely to become an alcoholic. Work really hard at not being like that drug addict uncle of yours, and you focus on that a lot, you're very likely to become that drug addict uncle. And work very hard at not eating too much, you're very hard at not smoking, you're very likely to end up in all those things. I had a heart attack a few years ago, and I learned in that environment that decades ago, they used to put everybody had a heart attack, they put them through these run away from scenarios. And they'd put them into groups and show them greasy hearts and slimy vessels and short lives and inability to do things. And it was all these knots, all these can'ts, nots, won'ts, don'ts. And about 10 to 15% of the people who went through that scare program changed their lives. Then some guy got the brilliant idea, why don't we show them something positive that could happen if they took care of themselves? And they didn't show them any greasy hearts, any clogged vessels or any short lives. They showed them long lives and being able to see your children graduate or your grandchildren graduate from high school and memories and relationships and all these positive things that they could run toward. 80+% of the people who go through that program, who went through that program, changed their lifestyles versus 10%, 10 to 15%. So freedom to me is running toward. And that's very motivating. When we try and run away from something, we get ourselves in trouble. I think most business owners are running away when they think they're running toward. What are we running away from? Let's make this interactive. What are some things business owners that we find it very motivating to begin with? Some of these things are incredibly motivating. Survival is a very strong instinct. What are we running away from as business owners or as businesses?
Chuck, I'm as you're talking, I'm thinking of that old classic business book, The E-Myth. There's that whole section in there that I'm going to do this because I'm going to show them. I work for an idiot, and I'm going to make sure that.
Yeah.
And so it is. And then you run in and you carry that same stuff with you, or you didn't learn the lessons you needed to working for the idiot.
Yeah, you're running away from the idiot. You're running away from the boring job. You're running away from making somebody else successful. Yeah. What are some other things we run away from? That's a great example.
Running away from fear.
Running away from fear. What kind of fear?
Any kind at any level. I mean, fear of financials, fear of cash flow, fear of
rejection.
Sure.
Somebody might tell me they don't want my product, so I'm not going to call anybody.
Yeah, not smart enough, not good enough, not quick enough, not whatever enough.
Yeah.
I'd say living in New York, two fears: fear of the virus. People here are crazy. You can hardly even walk. This is upstate New York. We have less than 1% infection rate. But you can hardly walk within 10 feet of people without feeling like you're a leper. Yeah. So that's one fear. The other fear, and this is my personal fear, is not complying properly enough with all these crazy regulations, which includes the things that they're doing for people who are in lodging situations.
Fear of doing something wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. I talked to a business owner last Saturday on June 28th. I rode my bike up to this mountain town, and I just casually asked the coffee shop owner, so did you guys get your PPP loan? And he said, and I didn't talk to the owner. I talked to somebody who worked there, and she said, no. And I said, why? And she said, because the owner is afraid of a loan. He's afraid to have a loan. Well, it's not a loan. It's basically a grant. I totally misunderstood the whole thing, but fear of government. He said, I don't want to be in a position where the government's going to come in and tell me I did something wrong and now I owe more money than I used to. And so fear of those kinds of things. So freedom fear is maybe one of the opposites of freedom, if you will. What are some other things we run away from? How about poverty? Aren't we running away from poverty? I got to eat. I got to feed my family. We think that's a forward moving thing, but it really isn't. We're not running toward anything so much as we're running away from. Phew, I made it through another month without defaulting, or, we're running away from poverty.
I think we're running away from risk too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's my psychobabble friend says the worst of human conditions is uncertainty. Well, I don't think that's true. I think that is potentially true. And I think there are conditions under which that is true. But uncertainty is actually what causes us to grow. It's the Carol Dweck mindset of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. The fixed mindset looks for certainty and everyone wants every day to look the same. And the growth mindset says, how can I scare myself a little bit today? And every day just reach out and be a little more vulnerable, a little bit something that puts us at risk. That is just so against our survival mechanisms. I keep saying this all the time. We are still hunting mastodons in our head. And that keeps us from actually being free, because we're running away from poverty, from hunger, from fear, all those things. We're running away from them. So what is freedom? Freedom is the ability to choose what to do with my time and my money. It's choice. And specifically for us business owners, it's what to do with my time, my money, and really my energy, those three things. If I have freedom to choose to do this, I've talked to business owners in the past where they said, well, I really don't want to work less than 5 days a week, which I'm pretty sure is not true, but they're trapped in it. So they have to make the best of it and pretend that it's not a bad thing. But when I offer them the alternative, I say, okay, here's the difference. Do you have to go to work 5 days a week, or do you get to? If you had all the time, money, and energy, what would you do? Would you continue doing what you're doing? And that's a choice thing. And we find out a lot of times we're running away from something when we really should be running towards something. So in business terms, too often we see riches as freedom. I have a friend in California. The first time I met him, I went out to his house, and he has, I don't know, in California terms, probably a $10 million house, which, probably a 3,500 square foot, pretty nice home in a really nice neighborhood in Orange County. It's probably $8 or $10 million house. And he's got millions of dollars in the bank. And he boasted to me that he's really wealthy. And I said, you're not wealthy at all. And I said, what do you mean? He said, no, man, look at my house, look at my money and my company. And I'm just really blessed to be so wealthy. I said, you're not wealthy, you're just rich. Because all you have is money. And I said, remember when you asked me if we could get together? I said I could get together any Monday, any Friday, and quite a few afternoons, and any day the last week of the month. And you had to schedule it 4 weeks out. You're not rich. See, wealthy people have all three. Wealthy people have time, they have money, and they have energy. And when I was a young kid, like in my early 20s, a creepy old guy about my age said to me, life has a built-in problem. Chuck, you have to realize this. As a young guy, life is a built-in problem. I've experienced it. He said, when you're young like you are, you've got all the energy and all the time, and you got no money to do anything about it. And you get into your middle years and you're really busy. You got all the money and all the energy, and you got no time to do anything about it. And then you get to my age, you got all the money and all the time, and you got no energy to do anything about it. So he said the key to life is to figure out how to get all three of those before you run out of one of them, before one of them is permanently gone. And I think a wealthy person has these three things. A wealthy business person pursues these three things. They don't pursue money, because that's an industrial age lie that if you make a bucket load of money, you will somehow be free. You'll somehow have this bucolic life on a boat. It's not true at all. We design ourselves into it. I know a woman who owns a $10 million business today, who doesn't take a single penny from that business because she didn't write herself into it. She just assumed, she literally assumed if I build a $10 million business, I'll somehow get the time, money, and energy I want. She didn't even get the money. She doesn't make enough money to take a salary. So freedom to me as a business person is purposefully, mindfully going forward toward grabbing all three of these things, using our business to build our ideal lifestyle. So we need to get all three of those to get off the treadmill.
Well, Chuck, how many times have we talked to people who are married to their business? They're just another employee with a different title, and they say that they just love working. They just love building their business. And then you ask about what else, and they go, what do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the rest of your life? No, this is my life.
And some of them are running away from the rest of their life. because
Exactly.
They're afraid to face what's really going on there.
And that's what I hit my friend with in California. So what are you doing this for? What's your big why? He says, what's a big why? And I said, well, why are you doing all this stuff you're doing? And it was crickets. He even said, man, I got nothing but crickets. He didn't have a why. And what he was doing was he was filling the Y-shaped vacuum in his heart with activities and accomplishments. There's a big difference between, and I think Tony Robbins and others might talk about this, but big difference between fulfillment and accomplishment. And most of us have been taught accomplishment is fulfillment, when in fact accomplishment is just accomplishment. And many times it's not fulfilling at all. And he was, too often we're running away from the lack of fulfillment by just accomplishing stuff. So running marathons and whatever it is we're doing to try and make ourselves unique, a lot of times is just us running away from, I don't have any reason to be doing what I'm doing. I need to figure that out. So that's why in my first book, I put that down as the first thing. What's your big why? So here's a person who's not free. This is 90+% of business owners. 30 years worth of business. I don't have enough people. I have too many people. I don't have enough money. I have too much money. I don't have enough square footage, too much square footage. I don't have enough machines, too many machines, enough customers, too many customers. You go through 30 years of business and then you try and sell it at the top of one of those peaks to some fool who's going to do the same thing for another 30 years. And we call that freedom. There's nothing free about that. Here's a free person. The only thing that you need to see here in today's topic is see your future clearly. That's it. Just see your future clearly. The rest of the stuff, you'll do all these other things differently because you've said to yourself, I want something out of this. I'm actually going to use my business. I remember the first time, my 6th business, it dawned on me that I could actually use my business to build my ideal lifestyle. That's freedom. And I felt guilty because I was going to use the business to get what I wanted. I actually felt guilty. That's how used to I was to being used by my business. So we need to see our future clearly and figure out how do we use this thing to get where we want to go. And we'll end up in a different place. We'll end up free when the other person ends up as a hostage to their business. All right, so that's the encouragement for the day. Let's be free. Let's be free as business owners and let's run towards something. So I'd love to have Tom, Sandy, or you have any good questions to put people in the small groups with? Based on that?
And I was just going to ping pong right off of what you just said, because I think it struck me. Maybe it struck you. We'll find out if you answer this question. We're going to put you in rooms here in a minute. But what are you running away from? And the other question is, what are you running toward? What are you running? What are you running away from and thinking it's freedom? Or what are you running toward? Because there is a big contrast for each one of us.
We just want to remind you, if you're not comfortable being in a room, then don't accept.
Yeah, you can just hang out in the big room. And
But
we'll be back
it's
in
a really
6-7
safe
minutes.
place with just a couple of people, and you can talk about, to whatever level you want.
And nobody's forced to participate even in the room, but we've learned stuff every time we've been there. So we're about to go to our rooms.
And how long are we going to be in the rooms?
5-6 minutes.
All right, 6 minutes. That goes fast.
Yep. Okay, see you there.
Survived. We survived. Ours was the best group, wasn't it? The two of us. So who wants to share some things from their group that might be helpful for the rest of us? You guys uncover any blinding flashes of the obvious that you feel like would serve others to hear?
Well, what comes to mind right away is just that freedom is universal in the context that you even shared it at the beginning of this call, Chuck. So the three of us in our room, my experience was, 3 different stories, 3 different professional pathways, 3 different professional moments in time, and freedom is at the core. Moving towards something, and it's just every morning we wake up, there it is, in whatever way in which we're dealing with it.
Boy, isn't that true? It's the opportunity for freedom. We have, and that's a difficult mindset for some because of where they've come from. But 90% of life is what we choose, and the other 10% is what happens to us, and we need to keep that mindset. So when COVID happens to us, we had Josh Alan Dykstra on last week, and he talked about how the idea of the new normal just bothers him because it sounds like something happening to us. And we shouldn't be doing life that way. Let's make life happen. Let's go out and make it work. We have this training room in Denver, and splashed across the front of it in big, 16-inch letters, it says, "Make your own business rules." Well, that's freedom. Freedom is really make your own business rules, because he or she makes the rules wins. So
Yeah.
what rules are we making? How are we designing our lives and designing our business to do that for us? Love it. Who else?
Herders, you're unmuted. Were you ready to say something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
push
we
your,
have this funny guy in the group with us who believes that life is for living and that he's going to live to 120, and he's strategized every day from now till then. You'll never guess who he was. Really is.
I was on a podcast not too long ago, and I heard the phrase similar to what you said, Chuck, was that freedom is really the ability to choose what you do, with whom you do it with, right? How you do it, when you do it. So if I think of all those things, that freedom to choose, and we were talking in our group, or I was talking in the group about even relationships, even conversations, even mindsets, all of those impact the way I do what I do as well.
it's awesome. One more?
I was going to add one. So we discussed a little bit about Monday, which is why it's fun to be here, because it kind of gets your mind off of Monday. And for us, it was really having more clarity on what the next thing might be, rather than feeling overwhelmed with the blur of what your plate looks like. Your plate feels heavy on a Monday, right? Because you don't remember where you last left off, and then you had a lot of fun in between. So sometimes Monday is overwhelming because you're facing everything. So I just talked, I guess my person, I've forgotten her name, directed some of the conversation, and it came up with that having clarity on what you're going to, what's important next kind of thing, rather than being consumed by a heavy load of, there's too much on my shoulders, which doesn't feel free.
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks, Robbie.
Well, I'll leave you with this thought. Freedom, again, freedom isn't running away from things. Freedom isn't being not under a despotic government and not this and not that. If you're feeling angry or a grudge against or suspicious of the bad guy or the bad people or the bad government, if you're looking over your shoulder and you're claiming that you get to do all that stuff because you're free, you're probably not free. We need to be looking forward and with joy toward all the things we have we can do, the opportunities in front of us, the things, the 90% of life that we can control. Let's get after that. That's freedom.
Thanks, Chuck. In our group, it just came to me that, us, celebrating our freedom, that we broke away from England because we didn't want to do that stuff anymore. We didn't want to pay those taxes. We didn't want to fund King George's lifestyle. And we decided we got to run towards something. And that's why we're here. And so there's so much of that to celebrate, that in the midst of what feels like oppression or loss or containment or rules and regulations, and I can't, if you flip it, there's so much that becomes available to us. And we've highlighted so many people here in the last few months who've actually started new business or shifted their business into a total different focus, using the same personnel, the same business model essentially, to serve people in a different way or serve people with a different service. So it's all here. The battle's here. It's not out there. It's not the government regulations. It's not COVID. It's how I choose to look at life.
Those are all just games to be played.
Yes, they are.
It seems there's a lot of history around beautiful things created from pressure, like things like diamonds, or, you hear all those stories about things that wouldn't be here, wouldn't exist without all of that pressure. So Can we have a mindset that the pressure we feel or the adversity we sometimes look at or the stuff we're going through could actually be the best thing that ever happened or led to the best thing? You know, along the way, the journey doesn't feel so great, but, you know, I look back on my life and, you know, think, oh, that time where came to Colorado homeless, you know, like that was a really awful time, but it led to the most incredible aspects of my life, you know? So I don't want to go through it again, but I also don't want to give up that it
Right.
led to the most incredible aspects of my life. And so, you know, when we're thinking about that, can we think about that those tough things that we've had to endure, those tough things we're even going through, if we keep going, could lead to something pretty incredible.
And that can lead us to another interesting topic. Maybe we'll pursue in a couple of weeks, why we should go out and actively create our own trouble.
More disruption,
I think
more
you-
disorientation.
And you can speak to that as well as anyone.
But we don't learn unless we're disoriented, right? And we do want to get into that little comfy place of going,
That's right.
too
And
much
don't look,
yet, you know, life's pretty boring without being disoriented.
So we don't usually give assignments, but I want to offer you one if you're open. We do this thing called reframing. And Sandy just mentioned a part of her life where she went through incredible loss on multiple levels and came to the Denver area with very little. And you can flip that and reframe it and go, look at the outcomes of that life. I'm not a victim. I'm not. Or you can say, and it led me to these opportunities, led me to her to me, which is a really good thing, especially for me.
It was terrifying and exhilarating.
That's
It
right.
really was terrifying. It was a time of everything and nothing.
That's right.
And so, yeah.
So think about, you know, your own mindset and your own story up to today. And could you reframe that a little bit?
Yeah. Could you maybe even tell it differently? Because there's many ways to tell your story. So what's your narrative going to be during this? How are you going to come out of this with your story? Because you get to choose the words even with how to tell it, right? So we want to move into some bottlenecks. And I don't think John's on our call. I guess he was going to be, but something must have came up. John basically talked about a new homeschooling or a new schooling method. So we'll try and get him on in the future so we can hear updates around that. But Malcolm and Melanie Herter were on 2 weeks ago and presented a bottleneck. And so we'd like you guys to unmute yourself and talk about any new thoughts or mindsets or outcomes from doing that bottleneck. And as they're doing that, you guys can all think about what bottleneck you'd like to present. So remember, issue, challenge, or an opportunity coming up that you could get clarity on and the wisdom of crowds. So Melanie and Malcolm.
Our bottleneck we dealt with was we have got so much opportunity in South Africa, but weren't quite sure how to put it all together. And we had some awesome people speaking into that issue for us. And one of them was a lady from Inkfish. Her name is Suzanne. And she deals with businesses, small businesses in South Africa. She's got a lot of contacts. And so we reached out to her this week, had a long chat to her, and there's a future relationship coming from that, that connection. We've also been reached by our Malcolm's son. He's a pastor in a church back in South Africa, and he had a young student that has gone on to a business school to get a business diploma, and he wants to start his own business, but he wants to be coached on how to do it. And so we are very excited about these things coming at us that we can kind of maybe put together.
It's one of the benefits of doing most of your work online. The world gets much smaller. We don't have to get on an aeroplane to go there. We'll do what we're doing here this morning. We're also starting to, get a plan to reach out to businesswomen in the town where my son leads the church, which has a school and orphanages and all those kind of things. Because most of the business in Africa is done through women. And so we're hoping to gather some of them. They can get into groups. We can't get to all of them, but if we can get to 12 people in South Africa and help them to reach some level of success, which is genuine and authentic and not a handout, I really believe we would have achieved what we're hoping to do.
We're very excited. There's a school, a high school of over between 500 and 600 kids. And an idea that came was that in the final year, the 12th grade, that they have an extracurricular subject on entrepreneurship, and that they can have a bursary for a competition where the winner will get a bursary to help them start their own business. So,
Chuck, isn't that how you started, or how some clubs in Kenya started, for some 3 to 5 clubs, by helping the egg lady, that lady with the chickens?
Yes, that's right.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's
I-
great. Thank
That's
you
awesome.
guys for
Yeah,
sharing.
thanks so much. Right, it makes me wonder why we're not offering an entrepreneur track to our high schools in the US. So
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yes. Why
Good
not?
We
thanks,
need it.
guys.
Okay.
Thank you guys. So who has a bottleneck? And remember, the bottleneck process is that you get a minute to share what the issue, challenge, or opportunity is, and then 2 minutes where we will ask you questions, clarifying questions, so you can get clear and we can get clear on what your bottleneck is, and then 3 minutes to rain solutions. And at that time, you mute yourself and just take notes and absorb what's coming your way. So who's got a bottleneck today?
And this is a safe place to be able to share and use those 3 magic words. I don't know. I've used them a lot in the last 20 years. You might think it's a small thing. You might think it's not all that important, but we might all learn from it.
Well, okay, I'll go.
There we go.
I
Thanks.
mean, where I'm with a small agency, I'm doing SEO and content marketing, and we want to target more like SaaS businesses are really on our radar screen, and we're talking to a few, but we get on our plate these clients that don't fit, small clients, and we're taking them on where we have to cut our services and our pricing down. And then what I'm doing is 4 times the work because I can't really get a result for what we're trying to deliver here. And it's what happens is they land on our plate and they want help. Anyway, I've gotten caught up in this type of thing so many times. I know a lot of us have.
Thanks, Anita. Great.
Mhm.
Take 2 minutes and ask clarifying questions so we can make sure we understand what your scenario is.
Mhm.
What is your kind of your wheelhouse of clients? Is it industry specific or
Well,
size or?
here's what happened. We got we started with Personal Chef Association as a client, and we got a result with them. Okay, so we're getting personal chefs now. And it's a small business niche without a lot of money, and then we're running into some of the challenges that you get when you're dealing with small, low revenue businesses without much education. So they're asking for things that aren't really, they'll ask for a set of things that they're told they should want, and they think they should get a result for it. And no, you can't really get a result that fits what their expectations are. Anyway, that's the gist of it. So we go, where's the low hanging fruit? What can we do that can get them a result? And you see it conceptually, but when it comes to the work, it turns out to be more work. It always turns out to be much more work than what you envision conceptually to start with, because you can see the approach to get a result. Like,
what are you doing to get the clients you really want?
that's a very good question, because what's happening is we got a result with the association, so we're pulling in these others without doing something. So, and then we're caught up in delivering to our non-ideal client. So the issue is we've been talking about how to address our ideal client. And I'd say we haven't gotten to the implementing what we're talking about stage. But you have a point. I mean, do we need to do something where when we plan, we go, okay, this week, what can we do in the physical universe to take a step?
Thank you.
I think that's missing.
We're going to go to 3 minutes of suggestions for you. You might want to jot them down. We're going to ask you to mute yourself because we're not going to ask you to respond. This is just, we're going to bomb you with ideas.
Okay.
I got a couple. First, get clear about your ideal client. Who is that person? Once you got them in your crosshairs, you might find them showing up. And then 2, find another agency like yourself that serves those people you don't want to serve, and refer them off to them. And then maybe you'll get some kind of corresponding referral back with your clients if you guys are both clear about your client.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I
That's
was
good.
thinking maybe like some kind, like an intern or somebody that is just starting out. I don't know if it would be an intern, but maybe a student looking to do something like this that might, be in a career that they're looking to go to, possibly getting practice with those types of clients.
Okay.
A suggestion in the chat box from Kim, so consider doing an online group just for personal chefs. So in other words, get all these low-paying clients together in some kind of group and community, which will actually be more powerful than one-on-one usually anyway, and be able to monetize that so people get help in expanding their business, and you don't have to maybe give them all up, but you can go after your target. Really, another Robbie said, define your target specifically, and yeah. So
Okay, that's good.
questions from
And there's a 2-page strategic plan format that Crankset group uses, and whether it's that format or another, it's just key to take time for some of that important work, which may not be the urgent work, and at least maybe begin to populate a 2-page or 1-page, 1-page strategic plan. Tom's comment about the ideal client included with some of the even 2 weeks worth of tactics, and then maybe 3 weeks, and then maybe a month.
So is there a template where I can get this 2-page strategic plan format?
Ask Megan at Crankset Group. I'll put that in the chat box.
Okay.
Any last minute suggestions? Come on, you brilliant people.
Yeah, Kim, I don't know. 2 computer women who do something similar to you that some have ideas that were lumberjacks. Well, there's two marketing people that we had on that do some things for one another. So
Yeah, they complemented each other's business.
You could reach out to Megan at cranksetgroup.com for their contact information, Anita.
Okay.
I was watching on YouTube, watching some coaching presentations, and this one woman came on and she made 100K in the first year of her coaching business. She identified what she wanted to do and who her market was, or her target was. And it's just taken off from there. So I think that's a very important step, is to know what you're offering and who your target is, your target client is. He started off with a whole lot of little bits and pieces, but that maintained her until she established her target market. And then she went into that and phased out the other.
Thanks, Mel.
So Anita, we invite you to come back next week and talk about any ahas from doing your bottleneck, if you would.
Okay.
Thanks for putting yourself out there. We have time for one more, don't we?
We do.
Anybody else want to throw themselves at the mercy of this crowd?
We're going to encourage you each week you show up on the call to
Mhm.
take advantage of this group and think about, even like Chuck said, the smallest of challenges, because we're here to help one another with those. And I
So-
can't believe you guys don't have any challenges, issues. or
As Chuck says,
opportunities.
3 best words we can say in a group like this is "I don't know," and the 3 worst is "I'm just fine."
Yeah, or maybe
Everything's good.
remember that you can sign up to be featured by going to the Rising Phoenix Business Community webpage. There's a place to sign up if you have a story on shift, if you want to do a bottleneck, or you recommend somebody that's had a story where they're shifting, pivoting, innovating. And Chuck, any news on the Surthrival Guide?
Well, yeah, there's no updates right now. The PPP loan process is done as of last week, or of June 30th. I guess one update for those of you who did not get an EIDL loan, I would again encourage you to go do that. It's a 30-year business loan at 3.75% directly from the SBA, no banks involved, and almost no numbers involved. No business loan goes past 2, 5, 10 years out, and this is 30 years. It's crazy. So, and there are no payments, there's no payments for the first year. So do that. It's just reopened to everyone. It was just for agriculture for the last 2 to 3 weeks, but it's been reopened to everybody. And then there's more stimulus coming, and we'll update the Surthrival Guide as it comes.
Yeah, there's already talk about the next phase of the PPP. Congress has already been chatting about it, and they want to get it in front of the president for signature. So
Yeah, the whole thing was supposed to happen. It was supposed to last 1.5 to 2 months. So they thought they were generous and put something out there that was a 2.5 month solution.
Mhm.
So close.
hey, we are this month in 3 to 5 clubs, and many of you are involved, but some of you are not. We're actually focusing on what we call freedom mapping, and you're welcome to visit any of our groups. We have actually one group tomorrow afternoon because it was the difference in the first. We meet the first and third weeks, but because of Tuesday being the last of last month, we have one group tomorrow and numerous groups next week.
And Chuck has a group tomorrow afternoon also,
That's right.
right?
Yeah, and you can get that from Megan. Megan, we're just going to have people just bombarding you.
And you can contact us if you want to come virtually. But yeah, freedom mapping is one of probably the premier tool to use to get off the treadmill.
Get that freedom.
Your name gets out of all the boxes, and you can figure out other ways to get freedom. So we have a special announcement because we have a new book coming out. And do you want to hold that up, Chuck? Because
Yes, I got an advanced copy of it. This is the only physical copy of the book that exists in the world right now, which is kind of cool. It's Rehumanizing the Workplace by Giving Everybody Their Brain Back.
Yep, so we're excited.
It's 12 it's 12 tools of distributed decision making, and we'll go through those 12 tools at some point, one tool at a time. But that launch will be September 24th is when it's coming out.
So we started with this one, Making Money's Killing Your Business. And it's not about not making money, but it's about not just making money. It's about getting freedom, all the stuff we talked about. And then the second book is Why Employees Are Always a Bad Idea, which is not about not having people that work with us, but it's about creating a mindset where people have ownership, distributed decision-making, and they are stakeholders. And then I love that the third book tells us how, right? So not only, what, but also how. So we're excited for that to come out, Chuck.
Why don't we wrap this time up with some BFOs? Blinding flash of the obvious, your big aha, takeaway, something I'm going to change in my thinking or going to change in my behavior. you can pop them into the chat box or just unmute yourself and lay them on us.
I think for me, what Chuck said about purposely, mindfully moving forward.
Thank you.
I think for me, real freedom is going to something rather than running away from something.
Thank you.
I just would add to that what Carrie said by saying if it's becoming exhausting, that means you're running away from it. It's a telltale sign that you need to run towards something.
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
I feel like the pandemic has become an excuse to avoid some things.
Thanks for that, Anita.
Yeah.
You're courageous. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Anyone else?
Do something to stretch yourself that seems a little scary every day.
Yep, that's a orientation piece.
Thanks, Ruth.
You're not a little uncomfortable, you're not growing.
That makes me uncomfortable. Oh, I'm growing.
Growing pains. Well, I just want to remind you, or remind all of us, that community makes a difference. In fact, I was listening again to Dr. Mark Hyman's podcast called The Farmers,
The pharmacy.
The Pharmacy, right? The Pharmacy, Pharmacy. And he is the director of medicine for the Cleveland Clinic. And he did a book with, my mind's a blank today. The guy at Saddleback. The guy at Saddleback Church, Rick Warren, the purpose-driven life guy. And they had their group of people that got together in groups lost over 250,000 pounds of fat. And so Mark,
not by just dieting.
Yeah, but by being in community, Dr. Amen and Dr. Mark Hyman worked on this. And so then he came back to Cleveland Clinic and realized that a lot of people's problems could be solved in community. And what they did was they started to put like people who had heart attacks or people who had strokes or people who had diabetes or people had all these different health issues in groups of community, and found that not only did they have support, but they actually created bottleneck opportunities to get healthy with one another, and found that after 8 to 10 weeks, they often didn't even need to see a physician. So they maybe were on a waiting list to see a physician, but what they were able to accomplish in that content, connection, and community, which is what we do in 3 to 5 clubs, were able to solve most of their issues. So wherever you get community, we need community really more than ever. We've always needed, but we really need community right now. And so find a place where you can live your life and live your work life in community, because it makes a big difference. And it's an accelerated way to be able to get where you're choosing to go, where you have the freedom to choose to go. So that's my little thing on community this week, is it makes a difference in every aspect of our lives.
Fear, disappointment, despair all grow in the dark when we're all by ourselves. You drag them out in the light amongst other people who also can say, yeah, me too. And then it allows room for the truth to enter in. So freedom comes from truth.
Yeah. So you guys have a great, Chuck or Tom have a great quote to throw on the slide or to send us out with.
Or if somebody in the group has one, we can do that.
Tom's pulling one up here.
I like this one. Some smart guy said this: everything that is really great and inspiring is created by the individual who can labor in freedom.
That really smart Albert guy said that.
My buddy Al.
Yeah. So we hope you guys have a great week. We'll be here next week. Invite somebody to come with you so we can create more community together.
Go chase freedom.
Thanks, everybody.
See you again.
Bye.